Hi, everybody. We're the Skeleton Crew, and today, I got to move my mic in front of my face. So, we're the Skeleton Crew, and today we're going to be doing another one of our patron question and answer videos. Just a little brief introduction to this whole video format. Patrons at Gorgosaurus tier and higher on our Patreon can ask us questions for our roughly monthly Q&A videos, and we endeavor to answer all of them here. We're a little delayed on making these videos because we all had very busy schedules in the fall, including our multiple fundraising live streams, several conferences all going on at once, the holidays, all of that. But we're trying to get back on schedule here. So these videos will be coming out a lot more regularly going forward. That's a commitment that we're going to stick to. Before we answer any questions, I think a brief reintroduction is warranted in case, by the grace of God, this is the first video from the Skeleton Crew you've ever seen and clicked on, our November 2023 Q&A. But my name is James Napoli, Dr. James Napoli. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and North Carolina State University.
My name is Amelia Zietlow. I'm a PhD candidate at the American Museum of Natural History.
My name is Scott Johnston. I am the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology.
I'm Dalton Meyer. I'm also a PhD candidate at Yale University, coming at you from the same location, in which Alex's room is behind that wall and through a bathroom. And as of now, I don't have COVID. We will see how long that lasts. Knock on wood. And together.
We're the Skeleton Crew.
We're the Skeleton Crew. I'm sorry. I'm watching edits happening in our Q&A video planning document. I don't know who just typed that I like slumplecore music, but we're going to talk about this. Yeah, God.
Oh.
I assume that's you, Alex.
I don't know why you would assume
I don't know. Things. I don't know what slumplecore is.
I made it up.
We're going to have to cut this out of the video, maybe, when you explain it to me.
That sounds like a geology term. Like slump pull sounds like a geology term.
I just put some words together that I thought would sound funny.
It was like, oh no, this is a slump pull basin.
But I've
you spiced up everybody's answers?
I've enhanced all of Jimbo's answers.
Alex, thank you. If I accidentally read one of these off during the answering, whoever edits this, please do what you need to.
Kill him.
All right, so we're probably going to go right into the questions here. Thank you to all of our patrons for submitting them. At some point in the video before this, I said that you can submit questions if you're at Gorgosaurus tier or higher. Amelia has thankfully informed me that I'm wrong about that and that you can do it at Basilosaurus tier or higher. That's $15 a month or more on Patreon. And, obviously we really appreciate all of the support we get there. The community that we've built is amazing, and we really couldn't do it without the support. And this is a token of our appreciation towards some of the people contributing the most generous monthly pledges, and we really, really appreciate all of what you guys do for us. With that, Thanks. I think we should probably get toward answering the questions. Does anybody object?
No.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, our first question comes from Nickname, who asks, I'm going to do a simple one. What's everyone's favorite music taste?
Certainly. Ari's going to go in the order that we have them.
Yeah, let's go in the order that we listed.
Okay. I'll kick us off. I listen to a lot of different kinds of music, so it's hard to pick a favorite out of all of those. According to Spotify Wrapped, which is my best metric of what I listen to, my top genre last year was synthwave. I think that's probably a good descriptor of what I listen to the most.
I'll go next. And my music taste is very weird and eclectic. I'm one of those weird folks that when I say I listen to everything, I mean it. That there is everything from Appalachian folk music to Norwegian death metal on my shuffle, and my Spotify Wrapped topped artist, it said it's rock, which I think is just Spotify language for me for I'm confused. because my top artists being Sammy Ray and the Friends, Sleep Token, and like having the Tardigrade song on there, I think just made it throw its hands up in the air and just give up for me.
Right.
So yeah, I'm weird. Although I've been on a indie folk kick recently.
I listened to, well, according to Alex, I listened to slump pullcore, and I don't know what that is, or if that's something that could appear on your Spotify Wrapped, but I guess we'll see at the end of this year. For me, music depends a lot on the context. I try to listen to things that are more instrumental when I work, so a lot of movie scores, classical music, anything like that. Amelia probably remembers with equal parts nostalgia and rage the period where I was obsessed with the soundtrack to Dune, and we blasted it on her speaker at all times. Yeah, that was, maybe it's everybody else in the department who's probably happy that we stopped that phase, because we play it real loud. Amelia's got a very good speaker that we would use in the office. I listen to classic rock music a lot when I drive, and I listen to sea shanties or the Sopranos theme song on repeat when I'm trying to bother my friends. I will say that in the last couple of weeks, I'm trying to explore more music, and I've been very into Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats and LP recently. I'm trying to kind of broaden my music taste, so I'm discovering a lot more stuff I like, which is good.
Is that Spanish for the P?
Yes, it is.
James, we're going to listen to so much Stan Rogers on our road trip.
Oh, yeah, we are. That's actually what Alex and I listen to the most on our own road trips.
Amazing.
I remember a wonderful moment. We were drunkenly singing Barrett's Privateers, and our Canadian friends were like, God damn it, the Yanks are doing better than us. And I was like, that's very funny. Because Stan Rogers is a Canadian artist, and just for context, if you don't know. Was. Yes.
Sadly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have often been accused on road trips and such as being the most normal music listener. No, that's not. I'm hard pressed to find a genre of music that I haven't hyperfixated on and don't enjoy. I think really my only two hard ones are really screamy metal, where I can't tell what they're saying like at all, and Eddie Stadium country music. This is obviously not like Willie Nelson or Johnny Cash, who I listen to a lot, but
like country stuff.
Yeah, and if you talk about Blue Jeans, you will not be spared.
Right.
So
Blue Jeans, your truck, all of that.
Yeah, any of that. Get it out of here. Fake. People from the country are sad, and they make sad songs, and that's good. That's the good one. Anyway, but I had a huge nu metal phase. I love rap music. I'm very into geezer core right now, which is old people rapping. Check out Pete and Bass and the Northern Boys.
Oh, dude, they're great.
Because they're so good, and I've been listening to them, just not ironic, just for fun. They come up. I like synth. I've been listening to a lot of communist music recently, from like worker party songs, stuff like that. I like historical music. I like old, what would be considered pop music, like the Andrews Sisters from like the 40s. But yeah, and I also like modern stuff. I guess growing up, Gorillaz was huge for me. But yeah, it's all good, except if it's those two things I said that I don't like.
Right. What did I write? So my Spotify Wrapped this year was kind of screwed up because I made a playlist that I became obsessed with, which was the Yorkie playlist. So for those of you unaware, I made a Mosasaur / Jormungandr themed playlist. So it was like Viking metal, Norwegian folk songs, and like sea shanties and Ocean Man and Margaritaville is in there as well. I love this playlist so much. But anyways, it really
Ocean Man is the cherry on top.
It's so funny because it'll come after like Amon Amarth or something and just make me laugh so hard. Anyways, generally though, I like, alt metal, alt rock. I don't usually like the really heavy stuff unless there's like really good instrumentals to go with it. Like if they're symphonic, I can usually kind of put the screamy stuff aside. But yeah, no, I'm pretty open to most things unless it like sucks. So like Alex said, like how'd you describe it? Stadium country?
Yeah.
Like the ones that are all the same.
Country music post 9/11.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah.
After, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Amelia, I've been listening to that metal song I sent you the other day, Insanely Illegal Cage Fight, so much recently. It's so good.
I've listened to it like partially. I haven't finished it though. I do have. Good. You suggested a couple that made it into the Yorkie playlist, if I remember correctly.
Oh yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. Our next question comes from the man with no name, who asks, "What's the deal with Smok Wawelski?"
What's the deal?
There you go. I was about to say you have to read it like Seinfeld.
Dalton, what is the deal with Smok Wawelski?
Well, so from my novice eye, which is not that novice, what I can tell about Smok is that it's a bipedal Triassic carnivorous archosaur. So there you go. That's it. And case closed. No, it's because it's a Triassic bipedal archosaur, it's hard to place on the tree, unsurprisingly, especially because we don't have a lot of the skeleton. Critically, we don't have an ankle, which would be the kind of smoking gun on if it's on the croc line or bird line of archosaurs. But looking at his ilium, I don't think it's a dinosaur. It's probably on the croc line. And apparently there are associated coprolites with chunks of bones that are in it, so it was at least to some degree osteophagus, which is cool. That's what I know about Smok.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I note is that the shape of the maxilla looks a lot more croc-like to me than anything like early dinosaur line. And so that's further evidence. And it has a postfrontal bone, which has been lost, and I think this is convergent, right, Alex? It's lost convergently in dinosaurs and in croc-line archosaurs. Yeah, so it's not extremely high up on the tree with either of them. Although, Alex, when does it taper out in crocs?
It's in Rasuki, so it's in stuff like it's in like Brasillasuchids and stuff. So
okay, so it seems to persist longer there.
Yeah, yeah. I can get into that once I don't want to.
Yeah, no, it just it not having a postfrontal, it's definitely not a dinosaur.
Well, it having a postfrontal,
and it's not like an extremely derived croc, right? I'm sorry, it having one, right?
Yeah, I'm partial. I think it's likely Pseudotsuchian. Everything everyone said so far is spot on, and yeah, that the postfrontal makes me think it's probably on the crocodile as well as the ilium. It was like big. It was probably the biggest thing in its habitat, and it's a fun reminder of people getting into Triassic paleontology now might not realize, but for the last 60 years before like the 2000s, everything from the Triassic was as confusing as what Smok is. Everyone's like, I don't know, it's a croc. I don't know, it's a dinosaur. Who knows? We sorted a lot of that out, but Smok is like this kind of throwback mystery.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Frankentrotsky asks, when did it become normal for people to start naming species in languages other than Latin or Greek?
To my assessment, this mostly started happening after we started finding tons of dinosaurs in China and they started getting Chinese names. I'll preface that by saying I'm not as fully aware of like what the naming conventions outside of paleontology are. So if this is something that's been happening like for a long time in like entomology or cuttlefishology, I just don't know about it. But at least in terms of vert paleo, it's to my eye, it seems to mostly coincide with the like kind of big influx of Chinese dinosaurs.
I like cuttlefishology.
It sounds sweet.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, that's about right. There have been isolated scientific names that I know of, and none are springing to mind right now, where they are named for more local things or especially local mythology. But I think it was primarily the huge influx of discoveries from China that really prefaced or really jump-started the idea that, we shouldn't be using only Latin and Greek to name these things. We should be broadening the kind of languages that we use. The only provision that I'm aware of from the ICZN is that the name needs to be Latinized to a degree, which is always still kind of done. Although honestly, not really.
Not
like the animal Yichi or Dailong, like it's not really Latinized, but like it doesn't refuse to play by like Latin phonology. You're supposed to remove like special characters or any sort of things that like sounds that are present in non-English languages, I think are not supposed to be like firmly enforced in the name, even with like Nequebesaurus. what you can include non-English sounds in the name, but you can't make it that the name like it can't be a core part of the name as written. Like you don't put in umlauts or accent marks or anything like that. Like even when it's Latinized, there are vocabulary. There are phonological symbols in Latin that dictate like the length of the syllable, and those are not included. Right. So like you're not just using like it's with any language. It's like you're just using the Latin alphabet with no sort of symbol like that. And it's assumed that you're able to pronounce the name in some way.
So also, sorry, I distracted myself. Is Yark a fully non-Latin name?
Yeah, Jark is it's Celtic, or it's I think it's Scots Gaelic. Yeah, it's one of the Celtic languages.
I thought the species name was Latin, though. Or is it not?
No, it's Shianath, which is definitely not.
That's pretty. That is a pretty tight name.
Shianath.
Shianath.
No. I'm making a bad joke.
Oh, wow. That was a rough one, huh?
Anyway, yes, Jark, I just confirmed. It is Scots Gaelic in particular, which is, if you know about Scots Gaelic, it's a nice thing to honor that language in a scientific name because unlike Irish Gaelic, which has remained spoken, like a lot of people in Ireland still speak Gaelic, even if you're learning it as a second language in school. Scots Gaelic was basically ethnic cleansed out of most of Scotland. And so the language has an extreme paucity of speakers because after in the 1700s, the British started like exerting control over the Scottish Highlands a lot more directly. They banned many aspects of Scottish culture, including the speaking of Scots Gaelic. And so unlike Irish Gaelic, like I think there's only a couple thousand people who are known to be fluent in Scots Gaelic. So the language is like very, very endangered. I think there's a movement now in the UK to start bringing it back in Scottish schools, but it's a hard thing to resurrect a language like that. So It's nice to see that particular piece of honor.
They can only be free once the false Germanic kings of England are felled.
That sounds like the kind of talk that triggered the war between Britain and Scotland that triggered that whole thing, Alex.
Yeah.
So Caiman de Lunetas has asked, what would be a badass name for a dinosaur that hasn't been used before? And Dalton, please start us off.
Certainly. So it's tricky because personally, I have a few names on deck for potential animals. I wouldn't really consider them badass. And, a lot of it really depends on what kind of animal you're naming, right? So, like, I think it's prudent to give animals names that are at least neat to cool, if not fully badass on whatever spectrum I'm creating there. But a good, cool name for a little noasaur is going to be different than like a huge thyreophorine. I am partial to names that come from folklore. I think they're really cool. I also like a pop culture name on occasion. They can be bad, but like I think memeing on them just from their existence isn't the most productive. Like I think they could be cool. And I'll throw this out there. I think I know I'm going to get roasted for this. But under the right circumstances for the right specimen, I think the name Thrawn could be cool.
Oh my god.
Nerd.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I mean, I'm not going to dunk on Dalton here. I think it could be a good name for the right specimen. My feeling is generally that names can often sound like they're trying a little bit too hard when they're trying to be very cool. And I think that this is especially because of the tendency where like the less of the animal we have, the cooler the name it gets. So like you get a Tyrannosaur like Dynamoterror Dynasties when the holotype is like part of a very weathered frontal. Or Thanos, which is what is Thanos? It's an abelosaur, right?
It's a small abelosaur.
A very small abelosaur. Right? To me, like it always sounds a little bit like you're trying too hard to get some attention to the thing. I think there are cases where a really cool name does fit for the animal, like, not to be obsequious to another member of the crew, but I think Jormungandr for that particular specimen of a mosasaur was like perfect, especially with the species name being Walhallaensis, or is it Walhallaensis?
Walhallaensis, technically.
Walhallaensis. It fits the animal, right? It's the world serpent. It's a big, snake-looking lizard. It's living in the water. It's a sea monster. It's from Walhalla. That's a good confluence of things. I think when you have that, it can be really good to give something a cool name because that fits it. But I think otherwise, you got to be a little careful. I have a lot of names on deck that I think would be good for the right animal, kind of like Dalton was saying. But my personal favorites would be if we found a British megatheropod and named it Beloticadros, which is the Celtic god of warfare that was worshipped in the British Isles, or any horned or crested dinosaur from Europe and naming it Trinunos, which is a Celtic horned god. I think of various religious attributions. I don't think we really know exactly the context in which Trinunos was worshipped.
I'll echo James's point there of that sometimes names do sound like they're trying a little bit too hard, but like some of my favorite, and granted this is not a dinosaur name, but some of my favorite prehistoric animal names are ones that are like, they have a good sound to them and they mean something that's beautiful, or they're a reference to something that's beautiful. And one of my favorites of that is very funnily from an incredibly goofy animal, Pterodaustro. One of the goofiest looking critters that's ever graced this earth, and its name translates out to like the wing of the southern wind, which is just has this poetic beauty to it for just the weirdest little dude, and I love it so much. But I think I've said this one before. Naming either some sort of absolutely enormous titanosaur or an extra large theropod after the like something derived from like Ozymandias, the poem by Shelley, because I think like when I read that poem, I do kind of think about paleontology of one, the descriptor of like vast and trunkless legs of stone standing in a desert is like very objectively just a correct thing that you can find in fossils. And also the sentiment of the like, look upon my works, ye mighty, in despair, and nothing beside remains, of like, this is like the remnants of a bygone, like incredibly powerful ruler that time has swallowed up and there is nothing left, I think is also very evocative for something that used to be incredibly powerful, but is now gone from this world. And I think that really encompasses that whole situation. I think that would be really cool.
Here's the problem. I'm going to be stingy because I have a few ideas that I intend to use, and I don't trust you people. Not you guys, but the internet collectively. I can tell you all later some of them. I've told James a couple of them. I'm actually pretty proud of a couple of them, to which he said, that looks like a name that should be given to a dinosaur or a pterosaur, to which I say I don't care.
Oh, I've heard this one. It's a good one. I've
got a couple. Well, here's one that I don't think anyone will actually take, and it's not. So I generally agree with the feeling that like cool names should be well-deserved. They should not be scraps. They should not be at risk of being lumped into anything, and they should just deserve it. So, but this is not a badass name. This is just one that I thought was funny. Which is, if I am translating it correctly, Hydrapnosaurus would be wet dead lizard.
I didn't like that one.
Hydra is not, but yes, it would. It's something that would be water dead lizard. Hold on, I'm gonna.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna
make
do
it
some Latin. Yeah,
make it wet because that's the point.
Make it wet.
But I've got a couple in here. Like I have my list of names. I have a couple. I have 2 or 3 like pop culture ones. Most of them are kind of descriptive. A couple of them are folklore stuff or story based. Mythology, I should say, rather than story. But
it'd be like Humidimapnosaurus.
So Google Translate is telling me it should be infectum is wet.
Oh,
so
God.
it'd be Infectnapnosaurus, which is
It's gross.
That's gross. That's so funny.
Sounds like a magic card.
Yeah, it would be
Proliferate.
Humidimapnosaurus or something like that. Yeah,
I'll figure it out. It's low on the list.
Right, as it should be, maybe.
Well, that's something to give to something fragmentary. That's probably its own thing.
Right.
Fair. All right.
But anyway.
I got skipped. I won't stand for this. I will.
Oh, you did.
Sid.
I didn't think I was next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all good.
I forgot we stopped after Scott.
That's good because a lot of people have said most of the things I was going to say. the real names I'm going to name things, you'll have to wait for the papers to come out. Ka-chow. Although I do like folklore names, Ozymandias is a cool name, like Scott said. I think names should be informative in regards to something, like morphology more, maybe where it's from, if it's at all interesting. But also, I'm not anti-fun. But I think, like, if you're going to do a personal name, or like a name that's a little more personal, or maybe like if you're going to do something pop cultural, it should be something that maybe is very near and dear to you. If you're going to do a name that's, I guess, unless, like, I have two minds of it. You see the fossil, and if a name doesn't immediately jump into your brain, what you have to do is, like, go to a dark, windowless room and sit on the floor for 3 days and not eat any food. And also just, put headphones on, and at the end of 3 days, you'll have it. That's the name. Don't try. Like James said, exactly. It has to come to you.
This is true.
Yeah, there will come a moment where you find the name, and in my experience, I mean, listen, I'm not going to get all metaphorical, but when you find the name, you find the name. Like,
Indeed.
And that's the thing, is I think a lot of the time people say, like, here's a cool name I'd like to give to something, which is fine, but it might not be that thing's name. It's like if you get a pet, like we talked about in the prior Q&A, like you got to see the pet and then you know what its name should be. That's the way it goes. I remember when we named Kuru, like Amelia and I were in the Hall of Asian Peoples at the AMNH looking at, like, all these Buddhist tankas, because that was the kind of the lab standard for how we were naming Mongolian fossils. And when we found Kurukola, that was it. Like, I was just like, oh, that's it. Everything else felt like I was trying too hard.
That's what happened basically when we named Jormungandr too. Like, in the chat, I remember very clearly, I texted the author group chat. I said, hey guys, we should start thinking about a name. And Clint is like, no, I have the name. I was like, okay, sure. And it's like, oh, no, you're right. Okay.
Right. And I think it might be worth just saying, I know we're prolonging the Q&A and I don't mean to, but as of recently in our Discord, there's been a lot of discussion over the name of Tyrannosaurus macraensis. And I think that there's probably a case to be made that the authors saw it and didn't think it, like, any of those cool names were the name that it needed. Like, it's not a particularly impressive fossil specimen. And so maybe they said, yeah, you know what? Macraensis is the right name for this.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe.
Yeah, and an important thing to keep in mind about, like, naming. Things you thought were cool when you were 14. Some things are better left in the past. That's all.
What are you talking about, Alex?
Oh, people naming, like, their children.
Oh, right.
That's all.
Right. What's a name like George? I haven't seen a George in a while.
Tyrannosaurus George.
Not for a dinosaur. I'm just saying for
But hang on, think about it.
I'm envious.
George.
George.
I'm envious of the early stages of this field where, like, if you just found, like, a bird that was bigger than normal, you could just go, it's Mega Avis. Let's go. Next
See,
one.
like, that's why I, like, as someone who has named something based off of a feature, like an informative feature name, I, like, don't prescribe to that as a rule, because some of my favorite scientific names, the meaning of the name is just that's the, like, gorilla and iguana. Like, gorilla just means gorilla. Like, a name doesn't have to mean something. It's just the label we give an animal.
Right.
But it's not the cool time anymore where you could just do that.
Sure, it is.
You could definitely name a dinosaur or some prehistoric animal something that actually has no etymology besides I think it's neat.
Right, yeah, you're right. You actually can do that.
Let's move on. Paleo AK92 asks, what type of statistical software do you all use, and what improvements would you like to see implemented? Now, Dalton wrote an answer for this, so I'll let him go ahead.
Sure. I'll say it briefly because I don't use that much statistical software. I know that R is the gold standard. Most of what I've done, I've used PAST for, which is an acronym for, I think, Paleontological Analysis of Statistical Tools, something like that. It's a very user-friendly software. And so that's why I like it. I think in terms of improvements I'd like to see implemented is more ease of use, like something with the flexibility of R that doesn't take like a full class to pick up how to do, and you forget how to do it every time after like a week. Something that's like easy to use, and something that I'd love to see is like an implementation of a bunch of tooltips that describe the use cases for the various tests, where it's like, hey, like I have this data and it's like, I'm curious about investigating this relationship, and the software could suggest like, hey, you should do like this and this, and is very explicit about the like the underlying assumptions and all that. Like, I think that would be really good for the field.
Absolutely.
Based.
I didn't write an answer, but I just want to chime in and say I do use R a lot for my research. That's most of what I do. And I think that R could be vastly improved, not as a language itself, but if the people who wrote packages for it were better about introductory examples of how to use their tools and what's supposed to be done with them. Some exemplary packages have done a wonderful job of doing these online tutorials where they say, okay, if you have a data set like this, here's how we expect you to do all of these things. Here's the quirks of the program and how it expects data to be formatted, yada, yada, yada. All these things that are really important. Some packages I have to use don't really do that or go through these expected use cases. And I, as somebody who is pretty well versed in R, but is not, I would say, particularly programming minded, I find it hard to learn new tools in R from time to time because stuff is not well commented or not well documented like that. So that would be the main thing that I would ask the community for.
Can I make another plea, another ease of use thing?
Yes, please.
I hate GitHub so much.
Yeah.
And I know that software people love it, and I'm so glad it works really well for the people who need it and who love it and use it. It's like so unintuitive to me. And I would love if our packages could just be on a blog where it's like, here's a link that says download, and then you click it. And
they are on CRAN usually, which means you can just download it with a line of code. But the ones that are just not on CRAN are on GitHub.
Yeah, I don't mean to diss GitHub, but like I
put it on CRAN.
Don't get GitHub at all.
Yes, put it on CRAN is my take. I'm sure Kalani is in the other room as a bioinformaticist, just absolutely screaming at all of us, being like, "No GitHub." But
that's all right.
That's my answer. That's why
I didn't write an answer either, but I agree with the things that have been said in that I struggle a lot with using computers. Because I was not introduced to any kind of programming language or anything until I began grad school. So it was really tough learning curve. And I wind up using Excel for as much as I can possibly wring out of it until I have to then go to
I respect
R.
that. No, I think a lot of us, really, with the exception of James, are on a similar, like most of us. That's why we keep James around, so he can do the hard math that none of us, I guess, would you consider TNT a statistics pad, right? Like,
I mean, kind of.
Yeah, it's doing stats.
Yeah, like those are statistical. It's a statistical test at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So also phylogenetics. We here are a strict mesquite to TNT pipeline, except for James, who does his trees in R for some reason, but whatever.
Well, R has a lot of really powerful approaches for phylogenetics, but something I can't get any clarity on, actually, and I need to reach out to devs about some of this stuff, is it's not clear to me if they're treating ordered characters versus unordered multi-state characters correctly. And that's really important.
Right.
But generally, you can get the tree faster and with a lot less effort, and sometimes with more information about the analytical pipeline and what it's doing in R. Like what takes me 10 minutes in TNT might take me 20 seconds in R. There's actually one really cool tool in R which automatically can do like missing data taxon exclusion, because what it does is it looks for taxa where the information lost from the tree by including them is greater than the information gained from having the taxon. So it can say like, you are actually making the analysis worse objectively if you include this. So it takes the subjectivity out of like, what should I exclude as a wildcard, where it says like, these things are actually informing the topology, so you should leave them. This thing is so bad that it's actually hurting the analysis to include it, which is a great thing to have. And so I found in the twig matrix, like one individual very scrappy taxon was hurting the analysis. the rest of everything was like contributing meaningful information about the topology and should be retained, which was cool. Anyway, yeah.
Last time I did stats was in college.
We envy you.
That was only 2 years ago, right? That's how far we are from college. We're not old.
My comment is that it needs to be better taught in general, because I was not at all prepared for it.
I think that the fact that they leave stats out of a lot of biocurricula in college is like criminal. It is. It is like people rag on stats all the time. Like, you know, everybody loves the Mark Twain quote, "There are lies, damned lies in statistics." It's really important for how you actually do science that you're able to like use these tools to do things. And the fact that like we let bio undergrad curricula be like, yeah, look at the tree. And then you get to grad school and it's like, you need to be able to use a programming language to do your analyses. There should also be a class where you like go say, look a tree, but it should be integrated in. I was very lucky in that in college, I was allowed to take biological statistics as my math requirement for my major. Like that was a thing I could do. And so my only math course, or I did one calc course and I did biological stats, which introduced me to R and all the ways that you would like actually use statistical reasoning to do analyses. And that was incredibly important. It's a shame that not everybody can get that.
Yeah,
I would have killed
for example, my stats class in college was actually a management stats class because I was originally a business major. And it was infinitely more helpful than the biostats class that we got, which was 10% stats, 90% prepare for your thesis, which in my case I'd already written because I was in the paleo track and we do things a little early. But that was like the worst excuse of a stats class I've ever taken in my life. It was really frustrating. And then to basically start behind in grad school because we didn't get exposed to real stats. And even then, the school itself doesn't use R, so we only did things in SPSS and Excel.
Oh, wow.
And, like, no one uses SPSS outside of, I don't know, in the real world, no one uses SPSS, but that's what the college used, that's what the professors taught. And so, imagine my surprise when I'm told to open the terminal on a Mac, and I've never used that before in grad school. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really like, it's one of the reasons that I think we like often advise. I certainly often advise undergrads to try to do a master's before they go into like a PhD program. And it's like, that's generally because there's usually a lot of stuff you have not gotten exposed to in undergrad. It's really hard to go directly from undergrad into a PhD program. Like, especially if you don't get exposure to that sort of stuff just by the quirk of where you chose to go to college before you may have even known what you were going to wind up doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's just the way it is. I was very, very lucky. And I mean, I use R all the time nowadays, and I don't think I would if I did not like have the benefit of a very, very R focused biostats course where we'd occasionally even use real data sets to do the analyses. And it would be like, you know, sometimes it was very simple. Like, here's your pipeline of making a graph. Like, and, you know, I referenced that until I understood the language well enough to do it. But it got increasingly complicated as time went on. Anyway.
Yeah.
Needs to be taught more.
And taught better.
And taught better, right.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful stats professor, which is again part of this. I actually have been meaning to email her because I basically don't think I would have a career. Certainly not in the way I do my stuff if she had not taught my stats course. I've been meaning to just email her and be like, hey, by the way, thank you. You might not remember me from biostats in like 2015, but I think my life would have been very different if I didn't have you. So thank you very much.
That's
Maybe
nice.
I'll do that
nice
after
thing
we
to do,
record tonight. Yeah.
I did that to one of my high school teachers.
Same.
Oh, a couple of my high school teachers like follow me on all my social media, and they're just like, this is, and we chat every once in a while. They're like, this is so cool.
All right, next question time.
Awainverse has asked, do you have any pet speculative evolution theories? Like, if the asteroid had missed, dinosaurs would have done X, Y, Z.
That's all right, to keep the order that things are written in. I'll go first. which I don't really have any that I maintain, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. When I was trying to answer this question the first time I looked at it, I could imagine that given more time, we might have seen the evolution of flightless as darkids. I'll say this much, which is that in terms of spec evolution theories, the thing that I just thought of right now is while I like spec evolution, I think it's fun. I don't think about it a lot, but I like to read like Afterman and the new dinosaurs. It's all fun. I think the more fun, interesting thing to think about with spec evolution is the idea of contingency, which is a thing that Gould kind of popularized and came up with, which is like if you replayed the tape of life, would things come out the same way? And I don't think they would. I think contingency is extremely important, and I do think it's kind of fun to entertain the ideas of like what if the like animal that became the tetrapod equivalent was a hexapod instead of a tetrapod. Like those kinds of things are fun ideas to entertain. But that's about it.
Yeah, one thing that I think about a lot, and I think like Dalton, I try not to entertain spec evolution ideas just because like, for me, I find it important to try to like keep the realm of like what I work on as like fact-based as possible. Like, I have a hard time separating my own headcanon from what we know if I don't do that. But I think it is interesting to think about what would have happened, assuming that had the asteroid not hit, the Earth's long-term climate change trends had not changed, what dinosaur evolution would have looked like in a perpetually colder world throughout the Cenozoic, or what would not have then been the Cenozoic, but is now. Like, you get a massive decrease in Earth's annual or average temperature. You get the spread of grasslands. That would have probably had interesting effects on dinosaurs, and I would be interested to see what happened. Thinking right now, I think it's likely that uninsulated, large-bodied species probably would have started to go extinct around the Ice Age. And so if you still had things like sauropods or hadrosaurs at that point, it's possible that would have been what finally did them in, because they might not have been able to cope with a very cold world. But again, we can't really know that.
Maybe they get insulated.
Maybe they do get insulated. Maybe it's just that. Right.
Yeah. Mine is not in the direction of like if the meteor didn't hit, but I think I've said before that I think I would be surprised if there were not marine adapted dinosaurs. And if anyone says penguins, don't you dare. Non-avian dinosaurs. Like I honestly think it's just a matter of time before we find like a coastal, like continental shelf Spinosaurid. If we have marine adapted sloths, I think that we can have some marine Spinosaurids. That's a treat. So yeah, I don't think it's like super out of the realm of possibility. I do really think it is one of those things that like this was bound to happen. And if they lived their entire existence and didn't, that would be even weirder to me.
I have a brief question before we continue this, because I feel like we've brought this up before. I wonder if the limiting factor wasn't that like they can't give live birth, like so they can't really leave the land in the way that other animals can.
Well, I don't mean marine adapted in the like okay. They're fully aquatic sort of thing. I mean like they're marine like a saltwater crocodile is marine. Like they'll go out into the like Great Barrier Reef and stuff like that, and they'll look really weird and out of place there, but they'll still go out there and eat fish.
Okay,
yeah. But Amelia, you're absolutely right. That is the theory for why like dinosaurs don't become pelagic animals ever. But I don't think it can explain why they would stay out of the water, except for like maybe Spinosaurs. I think Scott's right. Like I would be unsurprised if you get semi-aquatic dinosaurs like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like the spec-evo stuff is not also particularly interesting to me. Like it's fun, like the future is wild. I like that stuff. I've kind of been more interested in, and I guess this is sort of spec-evo, which is like not what if happened, but like what was. So there are like sections of Earth's history that we have like no idea about certain areas, and one of those places that I'm eternally fascinated by is the deep sea. And we have no idea what the deep sea looked like before like the Jurassic. So some of that like speculation is like, oh, what clades were evolving to occupy deep water habitats? How long have deep water habitats been around? You know, what would be like a Devonian or a Carboniferous deep sea fauna? Would it be weird? Like, how weird would it be? Stuff like that. Like, what if you took a placoderm and gave it like the proportions of a hyper-predatory teleost in like the deep ocean? That'd be cool. Could you do that? I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of some in terms of the spec evolution is stuff that I'd hope we'd at someday find a fossil of or something. Yeah, I guess that's it. I guess for as far as the Gould thing goes, it seems like inevitable that if you replayed the history of life, things would have to shake out, unless like literally every geological event happened exactly the same. Like that's the only way I could conceive of like everything shaking out the same on land in terms of like life. If that makes sense.
I mean, it still wouldn't because of the way like inheritance of genes works. Like it's randomly shuffled every time. Yeah.
And like, I think you would only, I do think there's probably a set number of shapes you can make for like how life interacts with the biome of Earth, unless there were like radical changes to how like the physical environment of Earth functioned, right? Like, cause we have like this incredible diversity to like everything. And that's also probably one of the reasons that spec-evo is not super interesting to me is that like, I barely know anything about living diversity on Earth. And every time I learn anything about a new group, I'm like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. But even within these incredibly diverse clades, there are like these fixed morphs. So I think you would probably get quite a bit of diversity in different ways, but canalized into these shapes that wouldn't be unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the classic example would be like repeated evolution of these body plans, right? Like sharks, crabs, snakes.
Sure.
Right. Like there's this tendency to go toward the same solution. There are things that work for a lot of mechanical problems.
Like most of you, like spec evolution is not super interesting to me outside of like Future is Wild or like the books that are like whole worlds kind of built up around it. Especially because like I work on a group for which like the convergence is a thing. So it's like, okay, if the asteroid hadn't hit, they would have become ichthyosaurs, which like I'm not happy about. So I'm not going to think about that. But it's like that is clearly where they're trending because that's where all marine tetrapods eventually trend. Like they get the deeper bodies, they get cobblestone hands, they get long, weird, skinny faces, like just what they do. So I'm not super interested in that. But I do sometimes think about like what are we missing from the deep oceans that we'll never know about? Like how much has life down there actually changed? Or like, you know, were Dumbo octopus around 300 million years ago? Like, I don't know. We'll never know, probably. But yeah.
Okay. So in that case, let's go on to what surprised you most at SVP this year, asked by Ben. Now, I want to just... sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to preempt all of our discussion, which is that most talks and everything at SVP this year are embargoed. And so like any actually surprising results from analyses, we can't really talk about yet. You know, we'll try to cover them on the channel in some format or another as they get published. But that like a lot of what we talk about or a lot of what happened that would have surprised us, actually, we can't say, which we apologize for. Anyway, Dalton, you wanted to say something?
I was just that's exactly what I was going to say, is that like, we can't talk about the talks. So I will just say, and it's a good question, and I'm sorry we probably can't answer it in the way that you would like us to. That's just the rules. But what surprised me the most that I can talk about is that, one, there was a really cool exhibit booth. So at SVP, if you're not aware, there are the talks that go on, and concurrent with the talks, there's always a big kind of area that's set aside for the posters to be put up. And in the poster hall, there's also the exhibit hall, which has people who come in, and it's artists, it is people who make casts for museums, people selling books. It's kind of an interesting mix of people selling. Like some people are there clearly trying to sell to people who are buying things for like an institution. So like big expensive instruments or like mounts of things. And then there's also people selling to the attendees, and they're selling like pins and art and cool stuff. There was just a really cool booth that I'd never seen before, because I think they're local to Cincinnati, of someone who does bronze sculpture, and they had a ton of bronze sculptures of different prehistoric animals. Those were awesome. Also, the zoo is great, but that wasn't a surprise because I expected it to be great based on its reputation. So that's my SVP surprise.
Yeah. My little surprise was that my talk got a really nice reception, and that's always perpetually surprising to me. This was really, it was very special for me because last year, 2022, I was in the Romer Prize session, which is like for like best student talk, which is supposed to be like the end of your thesis stuff. And I was in that session, which was nice. I didn't win the prize or anything. And I personally felt like my stuff was like maybe 75% of the way toward where I really wanted it to be. And I wasn't like super proud of where it was at the time. COVID delays, among various other things, are, a problem. And this year I was very hopeful that things were kind of in a mature state where it might be received really well by the audience. And I got this wonderful, round of applause after my talk. And I had a lot of people come up and try to talk to me about it afterward. I say try because there were crowds of people and it was hard to get to everybody. And it was the first time I really felt like I was like in the club, so to speak, in paleo, which is a really nice thing to feel. When you get it, it really feels gratifying, especially after you work really hard on something. So that was my little surprise on a wholesome note.
Mine would be how much I love the virtual platform this year. A lot of conferences I've been to in the past, the virtual platform has been just a little bit lackluster, and I had an absolute blast. And if you're curious about what the virtual platform is like, one, you can check out on SVP's website, or not on the SVP's YouTube channel. You can see the panel discussion that we did on there about the Skeleton Crew. And two, you can also check out the tour of the virtual museum that we did with David Levering, who helped put the whole thing together. And it was super cool. So go check those out.
Cool. Sorry, I wasn't sure how long to wait for the delay.
That's fine.
Honestly, I don't really have, there's nothing. So SVP is nice because you get to go and see exciting new research. Nothing I can really comment on. People seem to not hate my talk, which was nice. And some people approached me with interest and stuff. And it was nice to see my friends and coworkers and get asks for collaboration, all the good stuff. It's hard to talk about because there's really, so we can't share the specifics of stuff that get us super jazzed.
Right.
Yeah, on that note, I can't really share the things that surprised me the most simultaneously because of the nature of them, and also because they don't surprise me in hindsight. But I will say that the positive reception at the in-person meeting to our fundraiser was surprising. Not like in a way that I thought we weren't going to do well or anything like that, but like more people knew about us than I was expecting. And more people were like really into the fact that we were fundraising for the Futures Award, which was pretty great.
JP Lover 16 has asked, how do you usually go about countering anti-science people? This is a complex issue, and for the length of the video, one of us is going to answer, and that's Amelia. So go ahead, Amelia.
Well, it's not just for the length of the video. I think it's because like we talk about all these questions prior to these videos, and we basically all agreed on how to handle it. And generally, like if the person is actually like curious and willing to learn, and even if like they're a little like aggressive or whatever at first, it might not actually be coming from a place of like dislike or distrust necessarily. And so my own strategy is, as long as they do seem kind of interested and there is a path forward to kind of talk them through the process, usually I have success with that. Because even if like half the time what happens is they just don't know. I'm from a place where not everybody has great science education. So it is often just coming from a straight up place of they don't know. It's not because they're ignoring data or ignoring scientists or any of that kind of thing. Like, people just don't have exposure to these concepts, and that's not their fault. So if you kind of take a step back and just kind of talk them through it slowly, but not in a demeaning way, because that's not helping anybody. I find that you at least sometimes get, I didn't know that. That's kind of a cool. Okay, that makes sense. Even if they don't agree with you, but at that point, you're not engaging in an argument. You're not riling anything up. You're not being mean or dismissive or insulting them. That's the big thing I think I notice a lot of social media sci-comer type people fail at when they deal with these people is they engage in an argument and in a way that is suggesting that the person is saying these things because they're trying to be, disruptive. That's often not the case, especially in the US, especially in more rural areas. Like, the education system in this country is kind of a disaster, and that's not the people's fault necessarily. So, if you can be a positive voice and a positive experience for this person with a scientist or with someone who's scientifically informed, like, that is doing more good than trying to argue with them or demeaning them in some way. Of course, on the other hand, there are plenty of people who have a bad attitude and they're just looking for a fight. They're just like, they have the answer in their mind that they want. And those people, it's just not worth engaging. Like, if you need to satisfy your desire to pick a little bit of a fight, just say one thing, leave it, don't pursue it. Be like, okay, that's wrong, but okay, like, whatever. It's not worth your time and effort to actually put in the time to research an answer and try to help them through it when they're clearly not actually looking for a way forward. These situations are usually a little hard to read on the internet, or they can be, because tone is sometimes hard to read through text. In person, though, you can usually pick up on it right away. And yeah, basically, if the person is actually not looking to learn, not actually looking to cooperate, then don't. It's not worth your time. You're not going to change their mind. So don't waste your time.
Just to build upon what Amelia is saying, because I completely agree with her answer, I think it's important to recognize that the least productive thing you can possibly do in this situation is say, well, that's what the scientists say, or something like, you know what I mean? Like, Amelia hits the nail on the head. And I think this is true for science education in general, that you need to build up how we know what we know. Like, that's what my best professors did. And like, that's the only way that you can really effectively kind of engage with the audience in a way that's going to better their understanding. If you just say, well, that's science, like, don't even bother. If that's all you can contribute to it, just don't. Like, if you want to explain how we know evolution is true, great. If you're just going to say, well, every scientist agrees evolution is real, don't bother with it. This is mostly, actually, in my experience, addressed at climate people, because like, I feel like I feel like a lot fewer people understand how we know the climate is warming or changing. And therefore, there's much more of a tendency to just say, well, 97% of scientists agree it's happening, which never works. And so, like, don't do that regardless of what you do. That's the only way you're always going to make it worse.
Sure. I would say that not all anti-science is the same.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in climate, I think things that are more closely tied to like deeply held religious beliefs are always going to be like less tractable. So like, for climate is something that like I've convinced people who I've interacted with is like a thing that's happening. But how that's been done with James's example is always like my favorite way to discuss climate with people who are maybe like not knowledgeable about it or skeptical about it is like, hey, have you ever been somewhere like that's really hot during the day but really cold during the night? And then just explaining why that happens. Like, why is it hot in a rainforest versus a desert at the same part on the equator? That's water vapor that's trapping heat. And then you kind of build from there. Creationism, that stuff is always going to be much harder. And I think I don't think anyone's ever really convinced anyone of like that. It's always coming from the person who's changing their beliefs. They might have like a doubt or something or an uncertainty, and they'll come to you, like Amelia said before, if they're interested. It's not you're not convincing people by arguing with them online, though it is fun. But in a selfish way.
No, and that's what I said. Like, if you need to indulge like a little bit, like on Twitter, you can just have a one-liner of some kind that is just like, that's not true. Like, just be factual about it. Don't, like James said, don't just say, well, it's what the scientists say, because then you're doing the same thing that they're doing and you're deflecting to another source. Like, respond to the thing that they say if you want, but you don't have to. But like, we're all goblins. We all like to fight. It's okay. There's no use in pretending you're better than anyone else and not wanting to argue on the internet. But like, don't draw it out. Don't waste your time. Don't make yourself look a fool, especially if you're trying to get a job in a professional field that may or may not be looking at your social media. Just be professional about it. And yeah, like Alex said, like a lot of like with paleo, you do sometimes deal with creationists and evolution deniers, and you'll get the hang of it eventually. But there's a difference between people who are anti-evolution because they have their religious beliefs, and then or people who that's all they've ever heard. They don't know sometimes that like we do have Tiktaalik, that is a real fossil. Like, some people just don't know that. It's okay, because something that happens in the paleo field that, in my opinion, is a bit of a problem is it becomes a bit of an echo chamber where people tend to forget what the rest of the world thinks of dinosaurs and thinks of fossils and how much they actually interact with this stuff. And that is okay. Different people have different lives. But you have to be aware of that, be aware of how different people are actually seeing the world and interacting with these things. So that you don't make a fool of yourself online and get into a fight that makes you ultimately look like the jackass.
Right. And I'm sorry, there's something else I need to say, another thing I hate the most. I hate this, where like, so you might be arguing with somebody and they say, well, science is just a belief. And then you respond with your epic one-liner. You're in an Aaron Sorkin script briefly, and you think you're going to utterly destroy them. You say, I don't believe in evolution. I understand the facts of evolution and I accept it. If you're not an evolutionary biologist, I am sorry, but you believe in evolution. Because, like, if you are not looking at all of the information from the ground up and analyzing the data, don't use that line because it's not true and it just pisses me off. Don't use it because you'll upset me. Okay.
Legitimately, genuinely stolen valor.
Well, no, I mean a little bit. What?
You have stumbled upon one of my great theories of television shows.
Yeah.
Which is that anything that Sorkin has ever made is trash. Is whiny liberal trash, and is a fantasy of how the world works, whereas It's Always Sunny is correct because this is literally a plot element where something spins off and like it becomes a trial, and Mac is trying to convince the gang, oh, it's about eating cereal in the car, but then it becomes a trial about science. And the end, and Mac is like, oh, well, Dennis, have you reviewed these fossil records? And he owns him because...
Right, because he hasn't.
Always Sunny, because this is the world of material reality where being smart and knowing the facts is not going to convince someone with strongly held beliefs, you clowns.
Well, right, but I mean, also it's such a personal lie. Like, I believe in I don't know, most astrophysical principles I've heard. I believe in black holes. I trust the people who've told me about them, but I've certainly not reviewed all the raw data or mathematical equations that predict that these structures exist and demonstrate them.
We got a photo now.
Like, I can't do that. We have a photo now, which is great. But before that, I also believed in black holes. I would like to say I accept evolution because I understand the evidence for it. Like, that's a thing where like I do really know that it's real because of observation and understanding. But like, even a scientist in one field doesn't have I believe in most medicine. Like, I believe chemotherapy works. I've never tried it myself. I've certainly never run a study on it. Right? Like, it's just trying to Aaron Sorkin your way into the epic own moment. And that's just not how the real world works. Unless you're like dropping the bomb of like, here's this photographic evidence of you committing a crime. And if you have that for the person you're arguing with, you probably shouldn't be arguing about evolution with them. You should just go for the throat immediately.
So what I'm hearing.
Go ahead.
What I'm hearing is that don't look for your Aaron Sorkin moment, but do look for your Columbo moment.
Yes, just one more thing.
When I say to drop your line and leave, I am not saying an epic one-liner. I am saying something like that, like go for the throat, end it, be done. And for the throat, I mean like go for the throat in the way that like just be as objective and off, without actually like saying anything stupid. Like, don't be stupid. That's it. I know that's really hard for a lot of people, but like, and it takes practice. But if you're saying it to look cool, that is not the correct motivation. And you should probably just not say it, whatever it is, I guess.
So SwampApe asked us what our favorite meme format is. Sorry.
Jesus. A quick one. Yeah, we got two more quicks.
All right. So SwampApe has asked, what is the one meme or meme format that you just absolutely love? A meme you just randomly remember and smile.
All right. Well, for me, it's steamed hams.
For me, it is an image macro of the Hindenburg disaster with a large manatee photoshopped over it with the text, "Oh, the huge manatee." And I remember one time in, I think, middle school or maybe early high school, I was on my computer and my mom came in and she was trying to talk to me about something like not serious, but logistical and like, hey, how are we going to handle this? Like all this stuff's going on. And I scrolled by and I saw it and I wheezed the phrase, "Oh, the huge manatee." I laughed so hard I slid out of my chair onto the ground. And every time I see it, I remember that moment. And it was really fun.
Mine is a relatively broad one that we actually mentioned earlier in a segment that we're definitely cutting. But I absolutely love very, very specifically like quote retweets that recontextualize the original tweets. A lot of times when it's like a character with like the speech bubble or something like that, or the example that comes up every once in a while that always puts a smile on my face is a quote retweet of that one like Trump tweet of USA strong, and then it's just like Jar Jar Binks watching you beat your PR in bench press. It's USA strong, and it's so it gets me every time. But yeah, I also know another one for James, but I'll save that for afterwards because I know two.
Oh no!
But I'll save those.
Okay. There are a lot of good. I don't know. I would have to search. Ones that have been important in my evolution as a person are a variety. So, like steamed hams, obviously, but Don already said that one. So, there are a suite of Sopranos memes. Tony Soprano yelling about someone being a hero in this household. He's a classic. And I've gotten a ton of mileage out of the Lighthouse, the Willem Dafoe Lighthouse meme. Look at ye, post and cringe, which is really, I think, probably my top meme.
Is it me now?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay. This is hard. There's so many. Like the ones that come to mind. Sorry, the cat just launched. A couple that come to mind are, speaking of Willem Dafoe, just Godspeed Spider-Man. Like I know it's not a meme, but it's become part of my dialogue, Godspeed, like part of my dictionary. I say it all the time now. And the orangutan gun meme. Why funny? I think of that every now and then. Haunts. And the last one is not even a meme, but it's a picture I saw on Twitter that I saved that I'll think about every now and then. I'll lose my mind. It's like it was taken at like a conference or something. It's a PowerPoint. It's very blurry. The picture, there's like a guy kind of leaning in from the side, but otherwise there's nobody in the image. And on the slide, all that's there is a picture of an onion, and it says in all caps, bold. And I just think of that every now and then, and I lose it. It's so stupid. I'll try to send it to the chat.
I really want to see this.
Yeah, we should put these memes on screen in editing just so everyone knows.
Oh, 100%.
I guess I just remembered one that like squirmed. It's only been in my head for a few days, but there's an older episode of The Simpsons, I think probably like the third or the fourth season, where Homer is running for like some political office because he pissed off the garbage men and they won't pick up his trash. And he's doing a speech and where he's like, we're letting animals poop on the floor. What, did we lose a war? And now I've been looking for opportunities in my daily life where I'm even mildly inconvenienced by anything to proclaim, what, did we lose a war? I'll share the clip it's from.
Okay, and we have one last question.
Steamed clams.
From King Zasshu, who asks, what is the best gecko? For me, it's the eublifarids.
Yes.
Dalton, as our resident gecko expert.
I also like eublifarids. They're very cute. There's one behind me a distance away. They're delightful. I think my answer for best gecko is tokay geckos, for the three factors, which is that they are big, they are beautiful, and they're mean. And that's it for me.
I like tokay geckos for all of those reasons. I also like that they're vocal. I think that's cool for a lizard.
I really like the golden-tailed gecko, even though there seems to not be a huge amount known about it. There's like one clip that goes around every once in a while, and it's from Australia. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it shoots slime out of its tail as a defensive weaponry thing, like a velvet worm, and it's wacky. It's super cool, and I think it's neat.
I like the ones that look like leaves. I also like leopard geckos because I'm currently caring for one, and he's very charming and very silly.
It's leopard geckos. Like, very close second for me, I think, would be spherodactylids, because like they can move their eyes in a way that's very sassy. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, when I was working in the gecko lab, we had them in like these little cups because they're tiny, like fit on the tip of your finger, tiny. I think they're like tied for some of the tiniest vertebrates. And the way their eyes move, like it's like the meme of that weird monkey puppet thing where he's like looking one way and then looking away. Like, that's how they move. And that's a custom meme. Oh my God. Sorry. I saw another meme that I forgot about. But anyways, I'm looking for the bulb. Anyway, no, leopard geckos. Anyway, sparrows are cute, but leopard geckos, I've had one since the second grade. Right now, the current one that I have, I've had for about 9 years. I love him. He's wonderful. He's the best boy.
Okay.
Well, that's
our Q&A.
That wraps it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you to all of our patrons for submitting questions. And I want to briefly take this opportunity to read out the names of our patrons who support us at Gorgosaurus tier and higher. If you support us at Basilosaurus tier, you do get to ask us questions monthly, but you don't get to have me say your name on camera. So, just think about boosting. But going through in the order that Patreon tells me your names, I would like to specially thank Benjamin Siepser, nickname 3110, Philip Fico, AK92, Christopher Bellos Jones, Adamolos, Dan O'Kyrus, King Zasshu, Lax Fishin, Max Ironpaw, original username, Pythonic, and Wheat for your support of the Skeleton Crew at Gorgosaurus tier and higher. I want to thank all of our patrons as well for your continued support of the Skeleton Crew. It means a tremendous amount to us and is really what helps us keep these videos coming. So thank you all very much. Amelia is currently dying, trying to not laugh at the meme that she just sent us.
His bulb.
bulb. Oh, it's funny. We will put this on. Well, this you'll have already seen this in the video. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you all very much. Y'all are fantastic. And we will see you next time for our next Q&A, which we're going to record soon because we are trying to get back on schedule. We feel bad that we have been kind of delayed on producing all of these Q&A videos. They're part of your patron benefits, and we don't take that lightly. It is just, as we know you all understand, the fall is often a really, really busy time for us, and we can't really do these when we're not all available, and it's hard to make our schedules sync up when there's conferences and papers and everything that have to happen. So thank you for your patience, but we will make up for it soon, and we'll see you with our next Q&A, which is the combined December-January Q&A.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Yes.
Bye.
Closing statement.